When the Lord is using you and you get to a certain place, hey, how's the weather where you are? Or some other innocuous statement. I think it's happening here. And Jesus, very persistently but gently, keeps going. Believe me, when the time's coming when you worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews. The time is coming, and now has come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Many of you preached on this. For they are the kinds of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. Did you remember that this is by the well? That this teaching came. And now her heart begins to open. He's been gentle with her. He revealed the knowledge of the 6 relationships. Many of you in your ministry, men and women, women to women, you've got next to someone who has been used and used and used and used. And their opinion of themselves, their self-image is just wrecked. And they just keep repeating the cycle, hoping that someone out there will care. But here's Jesus, and he does care. And he's not going to use her. And so her heart opens a little bit. She says, I know that the Messiah, while Christ is coming, and when he comes, he'll explain everything to us. And Jesus replied, I'm paraphrasing, but that's me. That's me. I who speak to you am he. The goal is always, in our ministries, to reveal who Jesus is. Always. That's the ultimate goal. That can be contrived. We mustn't manipulate. But the end game is for them to see who Jesus is. Which brings us then to the question, how can we best meet their need? So why do we minister? We talked about that. Where am I? Who am I with? What are their needs? And how in the power of Christ can we meet those needs? How in the power of Christ can our church meet those needs? How in the power of Christ can our pastors' fellowship meet those needs? How in the power of Christ can the Evangelical Free Church of America meet those needs? Contextually, how are we going to do this? A couple thoughts. It's highly unlikely that we will reach them in the same way we reached the last generation, or meet their needs in precisely the same way that we met the needs of the last generation. We'll talk tomorrow a little bit more about that. And secondarily, if what we are doing to meet their need and reach them is not working, it is highly unlikely that doing more of it will help. Rick Warren has another pithy statement worth recalling. If the horse is dead, dismount. Now, sidebar to those of you who are in the presentation this afternoon, kind of that little breakout thing, is if you are in a very rural setting or a small church setting, have a funeral for the horse. Honor the horse. Recognize the legacy of the horse. But do dismount. Do dismount. Okay? Throughout history, churches have struggled with confusion between the message of the gospel and the methods used to share it. You're familiar with that. The message never ever changes lest lives and souls be lost for eternity. The message never changes. The methods must change lest people be lost for eternity. That's something. Same motivation. We never change the message. There's no other name given under heaven by which men can be saved. But the methods have to change. And not constantly and capriciously, but in response to the contextual needs. The way we share, the means we use, how we approach it. That's all about contextual sensitivity. And if we refuse to change the method, people are going to go to hell. That shouldn't have to go to hell. Let's That's pretty sobering. Now, there's good news in this at this point as well. Effectiveness in context does not depend on our meeting every need. Don't be overwhelmed by that. It does not depend on our meeting every need. Effectiveness in context depends upon giving people enough connection with Jesus so that they know that He can meet every need. That's where we're at. And it happened here. It's just exciting. Verse 28, drop it down a little bit. Leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, "Come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Well, that's an exaggeration, but we can forgive her. No, he didn't stand there and tell her everything she ever did, 37 years of daily history. He did reveal something deeply personal and at a point of pain. This is man number 6. And she understood that he understood. And then she opened her heart. It's a beautiful thing. Then dropping down a little bit further, and all of this is rich territory. Verse 41. Verse 40. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. And they said to the woman, isn't that amazing? She's now included. She probably was excluded, but now she's included as the bearer of this good news about this guy, Jesus. We no longer believe just because of what you've said. We now have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Son of God. Oh, amazing. That's just huge. We don't have to meet every need. But we need to give them enough of an exposure to Jesus so that they understand that He can meet every single need. Final question is when? In the terms of application, am I willing to meet their needs? Are we willing to meet their needs? Is our church willing to meet their needs? According to God's direction, now. No ministry strategy is ultimately useful unless it's accompanied by a timetable. Someday is not sufficient. Jesus would tell his disciples when they came rushing back with the groceries that they ought to lift up their eyes and see that the fields are white for the harvest. Right now. So, great works of God in effective ministry always takes place in context. Let it begin in our churches, let it begin here. Camp Shamineau, let it begin in me. That's the prayer. Amen. Any questions? Anything you'd like to explore more deeply? Or just talk about a little bit? I'm not going to linger because there's good stuff to come. Yeah, Kelly.
Maybe just wanted to start a conversation about the context within our context. In other words, youth ministry within the greater context of what God's doing in your overall body. We have found it seems as though things have changed pretty significantly. I did youth ministry for years, and I would say this is a year we feel like we had to wipe the whiteboard clean and begin to look at this generation like a missionary would look at this generation and try to understand what has changed and how can we be more effective.
That's so important. That's so important. 9 insights about Gen Z. Really on my mind because that's the generation that's pulling up to college for the first time. These are from Sean McDowell, PhD, Professor in Christian Apologetics, Biola. Okay, ready for it? They're digital natives. They have no memory of pre-internet realities. It's never existed for them. I have grandchildren, too little to talk well, who are web savvy. And I get lessons from them. It's very humbling. Okay, let's see. I go younger. Okay, now they know how. And they help me. Digital natives. They're entrepreneurial. 72% of older Gen Zs, and they're not very old yet, want to start their own business. Diverse. John, Professor McDowell was talking about America. This is the last American generation that will be majority white. The last one. Fourth, less religious identification. They're not necessarily less religious, but they are much, certainly less, he says, religiously identified. That is true. Many of you leaders have observed this for a period of time. I have 4 millennial children, and we have had a wonderful engagement, I think, and I think they would support what I'm saying. They're all parents now, married parents, you know. We've had a wonderful interface with the churches that have grown up in. We've had terrific youth leadership. I've had the experience of many dads. You know, Marcia, my wife Marcia, and I have tried to ingrain certain truths in our kids along the way. And then at some point in adolescence, they'll come running home from youth group and say, "Dad, Mom, guess what?" And they'll give the youth pastor's statement. And it's verbatim what we've been trying to teach them for 10 years. But God got through Pastor Phil, who was a great guy, you know, so it's just a humbling moment. However, none of them are particularly interested in the denominational affiliation of the church that they're attending. They are very careful, by God's grace, to check out that the Word of God is preached, that there's visible help, that they feel welcome, that their children, you know, there's a whole list. But not particularly interested in a denominational tag. No. All of them happen to be in churches that have a denominational tag, but they and their peers would only be dimly aware of that. You know, it's somewhere down on page 8. It's just somewhere there. Blurry, says Professor McDowell. Very few distinct lines concerning historically defined boundaries, categories, and relationships. Everything is fluid for them. And that creates anxiety. They think that there isn't such a thing. Their generation thinks there isn't such a thing as objective truth. Bedrock. Now that's not true, but that's the world in which they circulate. 6th is overwhelmed, in this list of 9. Caught in a vice between the possible and sustainable. Schoolwork, social media, identity management, global concerns, career choices, social issues. 68% in McDowell's survey overwhelmed by everything they need to do each week. Let me give you an example. I and my peers, I married my high school sweetheart. We were classmates, graduated together. We had maybe a dozen friends that were pretty close. 5 or 6 that were really very close that we kind of hung out with. And we weren't being exclusive. That was just kind of the management circle. Jesus chose 12. Some of these kids have 232 Facebook friends and feel obligated to stay in touch. That's tremendous anxiety. I mean, they're staying up late at night. Some of our college students, we have to encourage them, just shut that thing down. You can't, if Jesus chose 12 to invest in, it's highly unlikely that our young men and women will be able to keep 232 spinning. Just, we can't. It's impossible. But they've grown up in a world where impossible isn't a world, and it's a word they use very much. Because when someone, particularly us older folks, say it's impossible, day after tomorrow somebody does it. And it's now possible. Lonely, number 7. Increased anxiety and depression across virtually all demographics, suburban, urban, and rural. They're depressed because of the anxiety environment. Progressive. I think that's a classic use of that word. Most plan to marry, have children, buy a home, although perhaps later than previous generations. Less likely, it says here, to drink, smoke, and use drugs, but holding more progressive views of moral issues. Legalizing marijuana, same-sex marriage. It's pretty rare to find a millennial Gen Z that thinks that same-sex marriage is something to divide the country over. They may have opinions about it being not according to the Bible, or, but, why would you get all in a shape about that? That's a preference. And then 9 says, individualistic.